Hello there, welcome to Cansanity. Today we're going to make one of my favorite relishes, Lady Ross relish. Now this is a unique relish because it has apples in it. And some of the other ingredients, or the rest of the ingredients, are red peppers, celery, chopped Vidalia or chopped Spanish onions, pickling cucumbers, and then for the sauce you're going to have vinegar, brown sugar, turmeric, and dry mustard in the sauce. Now, this is a great recipe when you have a lot going on. When you come home from the vegetable market and my husband likes to say that I had the goo-goo eyes for the vegetables and I buy too many things. And so it's a great recipe because you can chop up the vegetables and then mix it in with the pickling salt, and then you store it in the fridge overnight. And so that's just to get the vegetables to release some of their flavor and some of the juices. And then the next day you're going to drain off that liquid and then you're going to put the relish together. So I already made pickles this week, and I want to do some pickled jalapenos because jalapenos were a really good price at the farmer's market. I do grow jalapenos in my garden, but I didn't quite have enough to make my pickled jalapenos, so I'm going to do that as well. And then I also picked up some beets, and so I got a lot going on in the next couple days. So I like this recipe because you do some of it one day and then you put it in the fridge, and then it really doesn't take that much time to get it to all come together. So I'm going to get chopping now and show you how I do that. Okay, so I've peeled 2 Spanish onions, and this recipe calls for 4 cups of chopped Spanish onion. And you know, it will depend on the number of onions you need will depend on the size of the onions, and so I've already chopped up one this size, and it gave me 2 cups and 2.5 cups, and so this time I'll only need 2 Spanish onions. So to chop it, it's just I'll just take a little less than half of a inch slice, and then I will just line them up, and then I'll just slice them again so that they're about a ½ inch one way, and then I'll go back and do a ½ inch the other way. Now, it's a good idea to look at your quantities carefully before you go out to buy your ingredients for your relish, because trust me, it's easy to get there and overbuy. And so that's a nice size, and so I can see that I'm easily going to get my 4 cups of diced onions out of just 2 onions this time. So sometimes the onions are really huge and you really only need 1.5. So yeah, I only need another ½ cup, and that's easily another ½ cup. So I'll finish chopping up the onion and then we'll move on to the peppers. Okay, so I'm just going to chop my cucumbers, my peppers, and my celery using my food processor because it's quick. I'll put portions of each in there and then just pulse. And so when you're using a food processor, you just need to chop it in a rough chop, because the food processor is actually going to do the fine chopping for you, which is fantastic, especially if you want to make a lot of relish, and or if you're doing a lot of canning. And so I will put in about 1/3 of my cucumbers and then pulse that. 12 times. And you know, this doesn't have to be exactly uniform, the pieces, because this is a relish. It's okay if there's some bigger pieces. I like my relish chunky, so I'm not going to make sure that you don't pulse that too much, because I want it to be a fine chop. Or sorry, I want it to be chunky. Okay, I just want to show you what that looks like. Just take that off, and then I'm going to dump that into my bowl, and then I'm going to do the next batch of cucumbers. Okay, so I've washed my celery and I've just roughly chopped it, and this is a whole bunch of celery, and that works out to be about anywhere between 7 and 8 cups of rough chopped celery. Now I'm going to chop it fine by putting it in my processor, my food processor. And so I'll do the same thing. I'll put about a third at a time, and then I'll pulse it about 12. Well, this is smaller, so probably about 10 times. And actually, that's good. So I'll just pulse that up. Actually, that's 8 times. It's a little bit when you have a smaller piece going in there, you don't have to pulse it so much. Just gonna pulse it just a little bit more. Perfect. And so then that's my celery, half of my celery, like that. And so into the bowl that goes. And then I'll chop up the rest, and then chop my red pepper. Okay, so I'm just going to chop my red pepper. And so I've already just taken the core out and the seeds, and then the pepper will because it's quartered, it'll pulse up really quick. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so there's the red pepper. So, if you want to get different textures in the relish, you can pulse one a little bit more, one of these finer and one of them more chunky, but this is how I do it. And so I'll just pour that into there. And that's what I use the food processor for this relish. Okay, so I have my cucumbers, my celery, and my red pepper in that bowl. And I just wanted to show you that you're going to need a really big bowl to put all of this in if you do this full recipe. And so I generally put it in my 12-liter pot, and because it has a lid, and that's when I put it overnight in the fridge, but you could use a bowl if it would all fit here. And so I'm just going to dump my onions, and you'll just see that once I put my onions in there, and I really don't have room for my 3 pounds of apples once I chop those up. So I'm just going to dump that into my pot, and then I'm going to add my chopped apples. Okay, so I've chopped up all my apples. It took a little bit of time to peel and chop them, but I just chop them so that they're just just a medium dice like that. And they don't have to be exactly uniform because it's a relish. And you want chunks in there, but they don't have to be exact. And that's hard to do with apples anyway. So, so that's the size that I put in the relish. And then, as you can see, this pot is very full. And that's a 12-liter pot. So I'm just going to mix that up. And then you're going to add your half a cup of pickling salt, and you're going to give that a good mix, put the lid on, and then just forget about it till tomorrow. Forget about it till the next day. Okay, so my cucumber mixture has been sitting in the fridge overnight with the half a cup of pickling salt, and now I'm just going to dump it into the strainer that I have that's nicely over top of my sink. And so I'm going to drain off the liquid, and I've already measured out what is going to make the sauce. And so I have 8 cups of sugar, and I have in this bowl turmeric, 2 tablespoons of turmeric, and 16 tablespoons of Coleman's dry mustard. Now you don't have to measure, you could just use one of these containers. It's 113 grams of dry mustard, and that'll give you 16 tablespoons. And then I have 3/4 cup of flour. That's the paste. That will be the paste. And then the sugar, the sweetener, and then the vinegar is 6 cups of vinegar. So first off, I'm going to dump my my cucumber mixture into my strainer and let that drip, and then I'm gonna meet you at the stove and I'm gonna show you how to make the sauce. Okay, so I've put in the pot the dry ingredients for my sauce, my 16 tablespoons of dried mustard, 2 tablespoons of turmeric, and 3/4 cup of flour. And I just whisk that up a little bit to stir it up. And then you're going to add the vinegar a little bit at a time. And this is really important. You want to make a paste first before adding all your vinegar. If you just add all the vinegar all at once, this will just be very lumpy, and so you don't want to do that. You want to make a paste first. So I'm just going to stir this up a little bit so that I have the spices mixed a little bit better in with the flour. And now you're going to add, this is off heat. The heat is not on. So I have 2 cups of my 6 cup of vinegar in my measuring cup here, and I'm going to add a 1/2 cup at a time. So I'm just going to add a 1/2 cup, and then I'm going to whisk this up. And I'll add another 1/2 cup, and whisk it up. And then I'll add another 1/2 cup. Smooth it out. And then add the last 1/2 cup of the 2 cups. Whisk that up. And don't feel that you can cheat this step. I have tried to just put all the 6 cups of vinegar in with the flour, and it does not work. So take the time to make the paste and whisk up the dry ingredients, slowly adding the vinegar. So now I'm going to add the rest of my vinegar, so 4 more cups. Give that a stir. Now when you start to cook this, there will be some small lumps. That's okay. And now I'm going to add my sugar, and this is my 8 cups of sugar. Whisk that up. Now I'm going to turn the heat on, and I'm going to turn it to medium-high. And then we'll pick up the video when this starts to cook. Now this will take about 12 to 14 minutes to thicken. It'll take at least 8 minutes on my stove for this to start start boiling. But in total it should take about 12 minutes to thicken. Okay, while we're waiting for the sauce, the relish to come up to a boil and then thicken, I just wanted to show you just how beautiful the filling of this relish looks. And while it's sitting there draining, I just thought I would pan over and show you what that looked like. Okay, so I've had the pot on the stove for 8 minutes, and it's still not up to a boil yet, but I wanted to just point out that you'll see little bits, small bits of the flour and the spices in your mix. I'm trying to just move away a little bit of the foam so you can see. That's okay. When I say that you whisk in the vinegar at the beginning to get the lumps out, that's to get the large lumps. Once this starts cooking, all those little bits of spice will cook down, and there won't be any lumps. Okay, so it took about 9 minutes for the pot to turn, for the sauce to heat up and start to boil. And then it's been simmering for about 5 minutes, and now it's coming up to a full boil, as you can see. And now it's thick enough to add the sauce. I'll show you on a spoon. Now make sure that when you're making it that you keep whisking frequently to just break down even more of those little lumps. But like I said, after this is really cooking and now it's at a full boil, then it will just completely break down. So that's been about, from the time I turned the pot on to now, it's been about 13-14 minutes. But now I'll show you on a spoon what that looks like and see that how thick that sauce is. See how thick that sauce is now? So that's the thickness you want. So now we'll add the vegetables. And so I'll just grab the vegetables and we'll pick up the video at that point. Okay, so once the liquid is drained off, I have more than 16 cups of vegetables, chopped fillings. I'm just going to add my 2 big measuring cups of filling. And as you can see, this is a 20-liter pot. And to do this full batch, you do need that space. So now I'm going to stir that in. And then I'm just going to heat this until the vegetables are heated through. So I'm going to stir it down. And these vegetables are cool, so it's going to cool the liquid down quite a bit. And then once this comes back up to a simmer, which will take about 5 minutes, then I can can my relish. So it's been about 8 minutes actually, and it's just now starting to heat through. I can feel it on the bottom of the pot that it's starting to boil, and so I'm just going to wait till it reaches a full boil, and then I'm going to, you can see it starting to bubble around. And now if you took your filling out and you had it draining longer and the filling warmed up, it's going to take a little less time. I happened to just take the filling out, and it was pretty cold, so it took a little longer to heat this through. Now make sure while you're heating the filling through that you keep stirring it, because you don't want it to burn on the bottom. And the other thing I was going to mention was that this is a large batch preserve. Now if you want to make half the batch, there is, under the servings portion of the recipe on the website, there's a scroll bar, and you can use that to just modify the recipe. So if you want only 11 250 ml jars, just use the scroll bar, and it'll, if you drop the servings to 11, that will modify the amounts in the recipe. Now it won't modify anything that is beside that amount. That is just a little addition to the description of the amount. For instance, if I say 4 pounds of cucumbers, the scroll bar will modify it to 2 pounds. But if I also in parentheses or grayed out say how many cups that is, that grayed out portion won't be modified. So, but you'll get an idea of how much you will need by using that scroll bar to modify the recipe. Okay, so this is, you can see that this is really starting to bubble. Now I don't want to overcook this, so once it's boiling, then I want to take it off. I want to heat it through to boiling, because you want your liquid, your relish, to be hot when you put it in the canner, but I don't want to boil it too much, because I don't want the apples to release too much of their liquid into the sauce and make it a runny preserve. So it's just about ready to come off, and for me that's now been 10 minutes rather than 5. I can see all the steam coming, and so once it's boiling, then I'm going to shut it off. Okay, my relish has been heated, and now it's time to fill the jars. Now you're going to fill the jars to 1/2 an inch from the top, so giving it a 1/2 inch of head space. And so what I do is I like to give it a stir, because all the apples will sit on the top. So make sure that you want to get a bit of apple in every single jar. So Give it a stir. And now you're going to end up filling more than what you can fit in your canning pot. So what you're going to do is you're going to fill as many jars as you need to. You're going to process, put the first batch on to process, and the remaining jars you're going to stick back into your oven that's preheated to 225, and you're going to just keep those warm. And I had shut off my oven, so I just want to make sure that I turn that back on, because I know that this is a large batch of relish, so I know that I'm not going to be able to process everything all at once. But so when you are saving some to process, don't put the lids on. You put the lids on only just before you're about to put them in the water bath. So over here a little bit. So I will process in that pot 6 at a time. I could probably fit 7, but I know I'm going to have to I'm going to process 3 batches of this, at least 3 batches of this relish. And so make sure every time you go to fill, you stir so that you get a little bit of the apples as well, because they will definitely float to the top. Now the apples act as two things in this relish, for flavor, as well as apples are high in pectin, and so they're going to add some thickening. They're going to add as a thickener to your relish as well. So I'm going to finish filling the jars, and then when I'm done, we'll pick up on the video. Okay, so I've filled my jars to within a ½ inch of the top, and I've already wiped the rims down with a dampened paper towel. I have some boiling hot water in that measuring jar, and then I wipe all the rims. You want to make sure that you get all of the stickiness off the top, because that could prevent the seal of your jars. Now I have more than I can fit in my canning pot, and so I'm actually going to do 7. I'm going to do 7, I'm going to have a couple left over, and I actually still have some more in the pot. So I'll have to heat this back up before I fill more jars. So we're going to start with putting the lids on 7 of these, and I'm just going to dump in 7 lids into my hot water, and I'm only going to leave that in there for 30 seconds to a minute just to soften the seal. And then I'm going to put the snap lids on my 7 jars. Now you want to do this relatively quickly, because you want to keep the liquid hot in the jars. That's important. You don't want that to cool down, because if you cool it down completely, then you run the risk of the jar even breaking in the pot. So you want to keep the liquid hot, but don't rush so much that you don't get the right head space, because the head space is important. If you have less than half or more than half, you run the risk of your jars not sealing. When you've done all this work, and so you want all your jars to seal. So I'm going to go ahead and now put my lids on, and I just use my magnetic wand to just pull them out of the water, and then I do my 7 jars like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my rings on to just fingertip tight, and you want the air to be able to come out of the jars. And so I'll put my rings on now on just the ones that I'm going to process now. I'm going to leave the lids and the rings off the ones that I'm not going to process immediately, because I'm going to stick those back into my 225-degree oven to keep the relish hot. And so fingertip tight, fingertip tight. Okay, so now we're just going to go on over to the pot and put the 7 jars into the canning pot. Okay, so I'm just going to put my relish in the boiling water canner. I have it at a full and boil already, and Just going to put these jars in 1 inch apart and 1 inch away from the side of the canning pot. You can see the air coming out of the jars as I put them in. Okay, now I'll just put it on, and when that comes to a full boil, then I'll start my timer and process those for 10 minutes. Okay, so let's just take a peek to see that it's at a full boil, and it is. And so now I'm going to put the lid on. And now I just want to remind you that you have to have 1 inch of water above your jars. So now I'll set my timer for 10 minutes. And then I'll show you what it looks like taking the jars out. Okay, my 10 minutes are up, so I'm just going to take the jars out. And you'll see that some of the jars will have slid over. That's okay. That's not going to prevent the seal. That's if you're using just a mat like I am. So when you bring them, pick them up by the jar, not the ring, and lift straight up. And don't worry about tipping off that liquid that sits on the top, because that will just evaporate. So when you're going to do a big batch like this, you might need to add some more water to your canning pot for your last processing, because you want to maintain that 1 inch of water above your jars. Okay, so I'm just putting in another batch, and I just wanted to show you what I mean about checking your water level. So the pot's at a boil here. I'm just going to put 6 jars in this time. Looks like I'm going to be okay, but I'll show you how I measure it. Now what I do is when I have a large batch going, I have a kettle on with boiling water in case I need to add some water, because I don't want to add cool water to this pot, because you have to keep that pot at a full rolling boil to process, and I don't want to cool the water down. So now what I do is I have a mark on my magnetic wand, and so that's at 1 inch where I've marked that with a marker. And so I'll just put that in the water, and I see that it's under the water level, but it isn't going to hurt to add some more water, so it's just under. So I want to make sure that I maintain that 1 inch above. So I'm going to add some hot water from my kettle. And that way I'm safe. And I'm going to put the lid back on and bring that up to a full rolling boil. And then start the timer for 10 minutes. Okay, so I'm on one of my last batches of relish, and I'm going to put another 6 in. And the reason why I'm not going to put 6 in is because I actually have 8 left. And I am going to save these 2 and process them last. And out of all the 14 that I've processed so far, I have only 1 that hasn't sealed. And so it's a good idea if you have a little bit left over, like I would have had to process 1 more jar anyways, that if that doesn't seal by the time I'm done, I'm going to open it up, take the snap lid off, check the level. I have a little bit of the relish left. I'll top it up if it needs some more, wipe the lid down, put a new snap lid and a new ring, and then process it. So you can process it a second time if it hasn't sealed, if it hasn't cooled right down. And so that's what I think I'm going to do. In fact, I'm going to take that because it hasn't sealed, I'm just going to take it and I'm going to put it on, take it off. I'm going to put it on with this, and then, because I'm going to put that in the oven and keep it warm at 225 while these are processing. So I'm just going to put the rings on and then put those in the oven. Okay, so all of my Lady Ross relish is done. I have ended up with 22 jars, 250 milliliter jars, which is what I was expecting. And the jar that I reprocessed sealed just fine. So I inspected the ring after I put it into the oven, or sorry, into the boiling water canner. I wanted to see if I could see what was the reason why it didn't seal. And there's this little small dent in the ring, so it's possible that that was the reason. I also did top up the relish a little bit before I put the new seal and ring on. And so I was happy to reprocess it, because as I'm canning throughout the season, I always end up with little bits of jam and little bits of relish, and that goes in the fridge. And so I really want all my relish and all my canning to be sealed so that it can just be downstairs and on in its place, not taking up space in my fridge if I can help that. So the one thing I wanted to tell you about this recipe is it is a large batch recipe, and I'm going to leave it like that on the website, because this relish is fantastic. In fact, I make so much, you're probably going, what are you doing with all of this relish? Well, I give it away. I give it in gifts. I make gift baskets, and I do donations. And you know what? Anybody who has tried this relish recipe has asked me for the recipe. It is fantastic. So don't be alarmed at the amount that you're going to produce if you do decide to do the full batch, because it'll go. And if you give it away for gifts, people will be hoping that you will be giving it to them the following year. So I've already started to slice up some more cucumbers to do another type of pickle, but that's for another video. And so I hope you stay tuned and check out the other videos on the YouTube channel, and watch for my next video, which will be how to do a really good bread and butter pickle. And if you haven't already gone to Cansanity.com, please go to Cansanity.com and check out all the other recipes that I've posted there. And if you are enjoying the YouTube channel, please subscribe. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Have a great day.